Welcome everyone to the Corporate Happiness Show. My name is Jacqueline. I'm your host, Jacqueline Pirtle. I am the founder of FreakyHealer.com, a best-selling author, and I am a mindful happiness expert. It's just very, very dear to my heart. And I want to highlight with this show how mindful happiness is actually really important for, business and work life and corporate. So today we have an extremely special guest. She was introduced to me, or we were introduced with each other through a dear friend. And then she was kind enough to hop on a call for my focus research project about corporate happiness and wellness and burnouts and what this is all about and what we can do better in the business world. And she strikes me as super knowledgeable, very full of wisdom, and just the approach that she has is really laser sharp, and I resonate really strong. So welcome, Anna Akhtar.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Jacqueline. I'm excited. I can talk about these topics all day. So
I know, me too. So that's going to be the danger for us. We might have to do a second episode. It's possible.
You and I can both talk a lot. So
I know, right? Well, I think it's because we're very passionate about it, right? I mean, we're very, very passionate people. And it showed also in the focus group when we talked about it, what is needed, where you're coming from, all that, how passionate you are. So you work as a people ops. I had to actually write it down. People ops in HR. So you do magic for teams. What do you do?
Oh man, what don't I do? I'm working in a startup.
What don't you do? Okay, what don't you do? No, let's talk about what you do.
No, I think it's important to highlight that I'm at a startup doing this function, whereas at a bigger company, I think the roles tend to be a little bit more specialized. So you might have someone that's like specifically culture, and then someone who's specifically onboarding. And so at a startup, I'm wearing all of those hats because we're such a small team. So anything pretty much from the time someone signs an offer letter onward. So I've got the logistical background checks and onboarding and getting their hardware. And then I'm checking in with them to see how they're doing. And then from, once an employee's life cycle with us starts, there's all kinds of efforts towards retention, checking in with them, performance, overall, just like DEI efforts. I hate to use that as an umbrella, but there's a lot of different initiatives that fall under the category of DEI, and I help with recruiting. There's so many different pieces to what I do, which is part of what makes it so fun. It just never gets stale. So many pieces.
So you're like the fairy for the people. Like the God fairy or something like that for the people. I love it. I really, it's like, and listen, you got the passion, you got the energy, you got the smile, you have what people really need also when they start out. Who do I talk to? What is happening, right? To help them find their ways. So you set the plateau really in a good way on mindfulness and happiness and welcoming and really warmth. And that's, I think, really important, don't you think?
I definitely think so. I think it's like the human element is sometimes missing from different companies, and that can ultimately lead to their downfall. Not, like they're going to fail as a company, but just in terms of getting that reputation and becoming a place where people don't necessarily want to work there. Having that human element is so important. Like people need to feel like there's someone they could talk to, just very transparently, and not get the corporate jargon when it comes to the different issues that they might be having, and even just like the onboarding experience. And so I try to provide that. I try to be as real as possible with people and not sugarcoat things, and just, be honest and relatable. That's my goal. I probably fail sometimes, but that's my goal.
Be like huggable. I feel like I just want to hug you through
like a friend on the playground.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's amazing. And listen, in your bio, you mentioned that you come from education, and that really helps you, and also like project management. So what do you mean with that? And what do you mean with education? How does it help you? What's the insight?
Yeah, I think that my background makes me uniquely positioned to do this job because of the fact that there's such a human element to it. It's not this like rote job where you're just going through and doing paperwork. Sometimes people think that HR is this very like rote, stale, wooden kind of job, and it's really not. And so I think, you know, having the background in education, I got my degree in education. I was planning to be a teacher, actually. I wanted to teach kindergarten. I was working with kids.
Wow.
I started grad coursework in counseling. I was planning to go that route. I did a brief stint doing college counseling with high school kids, and then
Oh, that's
also
amazing.
working with college students, prepping them for their next steps. And so having that background, I believe, has helped me with my current job, even though it's so different, just because there is an element of being able to explain things to people that I think you get from educational coursework and experiences that is still really, really relevant and important in my job, because of the fact that when you're breaking down these different concepts to people and talking about things, you need it to be very clear. Like, you want to explain things in a way where they can understand, and you want to kind of be able to pick up on their cues if they're not understanding. Because if people are walking away from the conversations they're having with you about, let's say, performance management, and they kind of don't really know what you just talked about, it's like you might as well have not had the conversation at all. It's
if they're more confused afterwards.
Yeah. And some of the topics are confusing. So I think it's helpful that I am able to kind of explain things a little bit more thoroughly, perhaps, and pick up on those cues and really break things down a little bit more. I think that's something I gained from that background in education.
That's wonderful. And, you know, it also brings an inspirational fact, right? Coming from education, you also, you know, you are like a vessel for inspiration, to share that inspiration with young people and education. There's a lot of, like, if you come with a kind of energy or with a, wow, this is really cool, and here it is why. So you mentioned something, about HR, like how the just like when a lot of times when you say HR, people kind of cringe and oh gosh, I gotta go talk to HR, and like you say, right? It is like unfriendly, almost like a little bit the enemy in the picture, right? And oh, they're not really there to help me and that kind of stuff. So
HR is a bad rep.
Right. So where do you think that's coming from? Not to make it anyone's fault or finger point or beat somebody down, but in order to shift something, you got to kind of figure out where it's coming from, at least a little bit. So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think that HR, even just like those two initials, has such a bad rep. And I think that's such a big part of why there's this big shift in tech to call it people operations now, just because even that nomenclature is a little bit less like, ugh. And so I think
change the name altogether. It's a lost cause.
I don't think there's any changing the reputation of HR.
Don't do HR.
Like, it's maybe done.
Sometimes starting over freshly is actually the way to go. Absolutely. I like that.
And I mean, it is the operations of people. Like, it is more encompassing than what I think people initially think about, which, gets to your question of like why there's that bad rep, because people think HR, they think, oh, I'm in trouble. Maybe I'm getting fired. Someone reported me and we have to have this conversation. Oh, there's just like this trail of paperwork now that's going to be started. And, I think that's just, no one wants to deal with that department. So I wouldn't. No one does. And so the shift to like thinking about this team as more of, the people that are there to serve you as an employee, like the people that are there to help you as you navigate your way through working at this company, the people that are there to help you figure things out and up level and figure out if you want to, do personal development type things and talk through your problems with you, rather than, take notes and file away this report of verbatim exactly what you said and, maybe pull it out and use it against you later. Like, that doesn't work. It doesn't serve anyone. And so even when it comes to conflict resolution, I think there's a difference between how traditional HR teams handle it and how, the more modern people operations teams handle it, in that it's
Okay.
more like, let's have a conversation, let's talk. We're not filing something, because it's scary, and you're watching what you say. And sometimes these conflicts, these interpersonal conflicts, are just like a miscommunication. And when you add this
Oh, yeah.
level of unnecessary formality to it, like, you're just not really solving the problem at that point. And so I think we kind of have to step back and just think more about, like, this is two people are having a problem. What's at the root of the problem? Let's get to that, rather than, let's save the paperwork for when we really, really need it. But most of the time,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it kind of, that goes into when you say, and I know we've talked about it too, like trust and transparency is just like so important. And you are very much standing for that, right?
yes, 100%. I hate the notion of, like, you talk to HR and they say this one thing and they're using this jargon and the company approved language, but then, it's almost a trap. Like, you have to really watch what you say. I like transparency. I just want to keep it real with everyone. Hey, this happened. I'm not really understanding, why this happened. What do you think? Like, where was this coming from? Your behavior was X, Y, and Z. Where's that coming from? Like, let's just be transparent, rather than having these canned messages that kind of, I say one thing, but I mean something else. It's like, the element of trust is gone when you treat people that way. So
it's a human, like a human level, like you are a human being and they are a human being. And why don't we look at the situation and what's happening? And actually I had somebody tell me what they really like to do is like like to become like in the moment when they're interviewing or when they're working with somebody, or like you have to do with people, to really look at it like, go in a heart space yourself before you entering the conversation, and then try to shift into a really like into a mode of I want to spend some time with you. I want to have you as my best friend for the next 15 minutes. So how can we figure this out? Because the level you're coming in that way is very different than what happened, why did you do that? And it's this non-human way, not heart-based, right?
Yeah, it's very cold. It just feels like something you're dreading. It's like going to the principal's office a little bit, versus trying to figure, there's a big difference with like, hey, I have this issue with this other person. I want to talk to someone about how we figure it out, because sometimes you just need a third party. And so a big part of what I'll do is just kind of mediation. I'll just sort of help guide the conversation along, but I'm not, putting this formal report together. No one's direct words are being written down so they can be used against them later. The ultimate goal is that we get the two of you working together again, and it's all good from there, and we don't ever have to think about this again. It's not for me to file a report and use this as your strike one and building a case that eventually leads to your termination. Like, that's so cold and awful, and not an industry I'd ever want to be a part of.
And it's also like what you're doing is you're helping and supporting, whereas somebody is already in trouble, and it's kind of like a pointing out the trouble. It's more like, how can we solve this? And that's really, that's very, very humane that way. So you are also, you told me that, and I really, really like that, a firm believer that companies need to make sure that whatever benefits they give to people, whatever, messages they share, that they're actually in alignment, and it's something that they can hold themselves accountable also for the long run. So it's not just like kind of, how did you call it? I think check a box.
Yeah, checking a box of, let's put a statement on LinkedIn. Let's say that we support this cause, but not really thinking about what supporting that cause means. Ultimately, it's more just this surface, like, well, other companies are saying something, we should say something too, or we look bad. Let's pretend we care. And so they put this statement out. And then later, when it's like, okay, time to prove that you meant that, well, then there's some hesitancy. It's like, oh, well, wait a minute. We meant what we said. We support the cause, but
however,
you've already taken 3 days off, whatever the thing is. And then there's a lot of kind of ultimately dialing back whatever that initial statement was. And it's like from the get-go, you should be thinking about, when we say this, what does it really mean? Like when we say we stand for X, Y, and Z, what are some potential situations that could come up where we would have to ultimately say, okay, we're going to do this because we stand for this. Are we willing to do those things? Let's talk about that now. Let's not wait until that situation arises with an employee down the road and then be surprised by it and try to find some way to back out of it. You know, it's like just thinking really clearly up front. Exec teams have to be held a little bit more accountable when it comes to like what they say. You have to say things that you mean, or your employees are going to call you out on it.
Yeah, and it brings down kind of like being flexible too, you know, because not every person is the same. Not every person has, you know, the same type of headaches and needs the same type of days off or whatnot. It's everyone is different. That asks for flexibility and mindfulness. And it also asks to put people as people. They're people. They're not robots. They're not just there to serve you and to produce. They are human beings that are actually contributing to make the business a success, right?
Yeah.
It's like an organism that's alive, and the people make the organism go.
Right, 100%. And it's like when you talk about equity, you have to realize it's such a basic concept, but I think it's still lost on some people that equity is not giving everyone the same thing and expecting them to, you know, perform at the same level. It's acknowledging each individual where they are and understanding that some people are going to need different things in order to be able to perform at the same level. And, you know, for some people that it can just vary so much. So there has to be a level of flexibility with what, as you mentioned, you know, there's different ability levels, there's different illnesses, people have children, there's so many different components of our lives that make us who we are. And if you're going to be in the people business, you have to be ready to deal with those things and handle them with grace and with kindness, rather than going, oh, well, you only have this many days off. So we've gotten to that point, and sorry, like that's just doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. And I think also it points out that this whole separation of, so this is the employees, you know, these are the employees, and then this is the business. That whole separation from you know, private life and work life, it doesn't really work moving forward. It actually should be about you are you and are able to truthfully be you, and you walk through life in private life and in work life, but you're not necessarily, you have, you know, you have clothing that you wear, you know, at home when you go to sleep, and you have clothing that you wear to go to work. You would not mix those, but as a human being and as who you really are, and your characteristics and your heart and your soul, your whole being, what makes you you, shouldn't have to change just because you're going to work. You should be you walking through your life, doing private life and doing work as you. And I think if that would be, you know, seen as when you go to work, that makes you a human being. And if you treat them as such, they're going to be so inspired, and they're going to want to give you all they got because they're aligned and they're themselves. Would you agree?
I mean, I totally agree. I just think that the issue is that we have lived in a society for so long where those things weren't the norm. And now we're getting to this point where, particularly in tech, you're seeing this bigger shift towards, you know, just, it sounds so basic, but literally just be yourself at work. And so you don't need to create a separate version of yourself where you pretend you don't have kids and don't talk about this thing and lie and say you're sick when really you have to go, you know, take your car into the mechanic or something. It's like, that's been the norm for such a long time. And so you still see it today where people have almost like this level of PTSD when you tell them that they can do this basic thing. I've had people, you know, that are starting with us that are like apologizing because they're like, hey, just letting you know in advance, I am starting on the 20th, but I have a doctor's appointment on the 22nd. I already had it scheduled. and they're giving like this long explanation, and it's like in the form of an apology. And it's like, where did you work before that you think you need to apologize to us because you're going to the doctor? Like, it makes me cringe because it feels so bad that to think that that's how we've existed for so long, where, people had to kind of pretend their kids weren't a thing. It's like, you don't talk about this part of yourself at work. There's some industries still where even just like not straightening my hair wouldn't be socially acceptable. It's like, we've just existed that way for so long. So I think so many people are still very mentally like, that idea of bringing your whole self to work sounds good, but they don't fully know if they can trust it yet.
Yeah, which is understandable. It's a shift, and we're all working, or there's so many of us working towards, the shift to make it just more normal, and the more we do it, the more we're also expressing ourselves that way. And that's why it's so important that you come, and you share your wisdom. Then people hear it, and then it resonates with them too, and more. It's a movement, and it needs to be highlighted, that's for sure. So where do you think people are hurting and companies are hurting most? Like, when to just kind of sum this all up, like, where is the pain on either side, you think?
That's a big question. I think the pain starts sometimes with the policies that are set from the top. As much as I hate to say that, I think that is the start of everything. Like, you have to be very intentional about what kind of company you want to have from the beginning. And I think Reprise has done a really good job with that, which is one of the reasons I'm so proud to work there. But just in general, I think that the source of pain comes from people feeling like maybe they were lied to some degree in the recruiting process. Like, there's a lot of statements about, what's being offered, kind of in that same vein of what I mentioned earlier about this blanket policy, this blanket idea that we're putting out there. But then when it comes time to actually prove that you meant that, employees, they're not dumb. They'll figure out that you didn't really mean that. This is just something you want to put on your website, or just something you wanted to say to recruit me. And then, once it's actually time to show up for your employees, they're feeling failed. And I think that there's just a lot of accountability there, and people have to just really be thoughtful when they start these companies about what they want the culture to be, what they want their employees to feel, and just being very careful about the language that they use, and ultimately not saying things if they don't mean them, because that is more detrimental. It's more detrimental to say it and then have it proved that you didn't mean it than it would be to have not said it at all.
Oh yeah.
So just given the nature of startups and tech and all, we've got so many popping up every day. It's like, I just think that people that found these companies have to be really, really thoughtful about what they're saying. And like I said, I think our executive team has done a really particularly good job about just being very intentional from the get-go. But to answer your question, I think that can be the source of a lot of pain with a lot of employees at different companies.
That's a good one, actually. I did not really think of that one. It's good that you point that out, because it's not something that immediately that's like where you think the pain is coming from. I like that. Because everyone holds themselves to that, and then people get disappointed and people get frustrated. So it's this, pain on either side. Because of that creation. And mindfulness comes in again, mindfully, what kind of company, you said that, what kind of company do you want?
Right.
What's the energy you want in there? How do you want your employees to feel,
Exactly.
And who am I as a business owner? Who am I as a manager? And what do I bring to the table? How do I make people feel? How do I show up in the world? How do I show up in the world, actually? What am I creating? What do I make other people feel? So if, the top levels can ask themselves that and mindfully come from there, it will absolutely create better rules and, ways to go how they want the company to go. And I think also then when you self-reflect like that, then you also mean it with your answer.
That's the most important thing to me, is just that it's coming from a place that's genuine. You know, like, don't use the buzzwords and say the things if you don't mean them in the first place, because that
Yeah.
catches up to you. So, you
Yeah.
know, if from the beginning you're founding a company and it's going to be ultimate hustle and go, 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 we're grinding, you know, it's not a 9 to 5, that's not for everyone. But if you're clear about that, rather than saying, you know, oh, we, you know, value all of these things that you don't actually mean, and you're putting that out there as a recruiting tactic, well, now you're bringing people in that believe you, and then they're going to learn that you didn't mean that, and that's going to kind of suck for them. Just be honest about the culture that you're developing from the get-go. That's my advice to anyone that's starting a company right now.
That's a really good advice. Actually, what I had a funny vision there. It's like, you know, you take a job and you're like, yeah, you're gonna get a hammock with it, with your job, and every day you have like some hammock time, you know. However, that's the message they get. They take the job and then it's a hustle company.
Yeah.
Or the other way around, you know, you say hustle, hustle, and then you send your people hammocks and say, oh, you know, because the
Like
hustle people,
messaging.
no, it won't work. So I kind of like that. I think that's a good one, actually. So how do you think companies can, besides what we just spoke about, how do you think companies can meet the people's needs? What do you think people need, and what do you think companies need? And we can go super deep, and then it takes them forever to, you know, change and to do that and then come up and have meetings. But like a simple thing that companies can do to meet the people's needs right now.
I think really developing policies that allow people to have a true work-life balance is a big one. I know that's kind of a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot, but it has to be real. It has to be, you can't say we have unlimited PTO and then kind of shame people for taking it. You know, if you're going to have it, you need to have it. People can be allowed to take it, and it is what it is. And there's so many different ways to promote work-life balance. That's just one example, but having a mechanism in place that allows people to really live their lives, I think, is one of the biggest things that people need right now, because the world is a mess. And you can't pretend like,
really, you think?
We can't pretend like people, every single person, regardless of they have a family, don't have a family, like whatever, everyone has got so much going on outside of work. People need flexibility now, maybe more than ever. So I think having a mechanism that allows people to live their lives and do their job, and, you know, like I said, if that's a 4-day work week, if that's unlimited PTO, like whatever that is for you, everyone has different opinions on those things. And I think a lot of it can all work. So it's really just whatever, you know, the preference is there. But having something that works, that you mean, you know, that you're not going to try to put in place for recruiting purposes, but kind of not really let people do it, has to be genuine. And then I think the second thing people need is just like, tying into what I just mentioned about the world, like acknowledgement of this stuff that's going on, because it's so funny sometimes. It's almost comical that you're doing your job and it's like the news is just unbelievable, and you're hearing this stuff like in the background as you're like working on your slide deck, and it's just so crazy. Sometimes it makes what you're working on, no matter what your job is, it almost makes it feel small, because there's so much going on, and you know, you've got your family and all this stuff is happening, and your mind is there. You can't help it, because before anything else, you're a parent, you're a daughter, you're, you know, whatever else, you're those things. And so knowing what's going on with the world, your parents, COVID, all of this stuff, it's like acknowledging that these things are happening is so important, and not expecting people to just kind of like ignore it and do their jobs and be fine, I think is a big one. Like, we try to really like call out, hey, this happened. This is a hard day, you know, like take the day off, whatever you need to do, come talk to us. Like, what do you need? Versus,
I like that.
This
Asking
happened, well,
the people.
well.
Asking the people, what do you need? And also, I think what I'm kind of filtering out from you is also like, so because different stuff is happening for different people, because we're all different, you know, to kind of like really respect when something really kind of is emotionally or straining or something like that. It doesn't matter. When it
Yeah.
takes somebody hard to really respect that, because for them, that is the way it is.
Right.
Doesn't
Exactly.
matter how it's for somebody else. It doesn't matter, because that actually advocates also to feel your feelings. Your feelings, do not put them away. Feel them. You don't have to dig deep and ride that negative wave all day long and
Yeah.
stay there. But feel the way you feel, accept and embrace it all, because we're embracing you as a whole. We're not
Exactly.
asking you to put
Exactly.
anything away, or yes, we're having a meeting in 10 minutes, so if you could maybe for an hour, could we just do that meeting? We can't change it, but we respect how you feel. We respect you as a whole being,
Yeah.
which is
And if we need to
humanizing the
move that
whole
meeting,
process.
that can happen,
There we
like
go. That's the other
there's
one. Yeah.
just there's elements to, dealing with these things depending on who you are. For example, parents that heard about Uvalde were not able to focus that day. Even a lot of
Yeah.
people that weren't parents it's just acknowledging that and not going, okay, well, we're at work right now at 5:01, you can go stress out about that. No, like
No.
you're a mess that day. It's
Yeah.
very emotional. And there have been so many different things that have come up like that affect different people. And to just pretend it's not a thing and, well, you're at work right now, it's just a little ridiculous, to be frank. Like you can't.
And really it boils down to asking people, how are you?
Checking in with them.
How
Can
are
you even
you?
work
And
today?
what do you need? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then respect that too. Respect it and really handle it accordingly, that they're human beings and they need to get what they need. They need their needs met, so they are happy people and healthy people, because that's really the most important thing. So.
And at the end of the day, you've got so many businesses that I think the upper level is worried about being too soft. And to those people, I say, at the end of the day, if you are going in too hard and aggressive with these policies that prevent people from taking the time off that they need and letting them be who they are and be open about that, you're not going to have those employees for long anyway. So
That's true.
Even if that's how you're thinking about it, then that's the reality of that situation anyway. You can't
Boils down to what kind of business do you want? Do you want this constant change, or do you want people to stay? Or
right. Yeah, exactly.
So how do you keep yourself positive and just happy, and how do you keep yourself aligned? What do? You live in Texas, Austin?
Yes, Austin,
Texas?
yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yes, oh man. Well, I've got Ozzie, my little dog, who's been walking around
that's
all the time.
Cool.
He's a big help. He's like my stress relief. But I think also I just try really hard to live all of the stuff that I'm like preaching to our employees, which sometimes I can be such a hypocrite, right? Because I'm like, take off so much time, and then I'm like on Slack during my own vacation. So I try really hard to just like honor what I'm going through as well, and not, just say these things and not do them myself. So if I'm having a particularly hard day, I've got stuff going on, I will, rather than the tiny part of me that has the little PTSD from bad employers that wants to just pretend it's not a thing and work anyway, I'll kind of resist that. And I'll let, my boss, my team know, hey guys, I'm dealing with X, Y, and Z. I'm actually going to stop today, So I'll just kind of try to live that stuff myself, and it really helps, rather than just forcing myself to work and get through it. It doesn't work. And
no, it doesn't. And I mean, sometimes it is like, sometimes, you have a hard time and you're like, work is exactly what I need.
Sometimes it's a nice distraction.
Yeah, but a lot of times that's not the thing. And that actually asks for everyone personally to constantly check in. And that's something that I share with my clients all the time. It's like, set an alarm once an hour, check in with yourself. How am I feeling? What's going on? What needs do I not, meet for myself, right? And you learn a lot about yourself. B, you are then always kind of like aligning, So this is what's happening, but what will be better, for instance, right? And
Right.
that's also how you create this really, really good energy that you then share and spread with everyone around you. So check-ins are just so good, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And even if that's just like, for me, that I have to kind of step away to have an honest conversation like that with myself. So I'll go outside. Like I said, Ozzie, you know, I have to take him outside anyway. So
Yeah.
it's a good moment to kind of really ask yourself that honestly when you're not in front of your computer, because it's so easy to ignore your own,
Yeah.
like, oh, I haven't eaten in 5 hours, you know, and just keep, I'm just gonna do this one more thing. Like, it's nice to step away and then go, you know what? No, I need to go eat, need to go take a quick 3 p.m. shower. And
Yes,
then I
and
can get back.
Ozzy says, "I need food. Let's go."
Exactly. Ozzie
So
doesn't
it's,
let me work
I
for
love
for
it.
too long
Ozzy, the
anyway.
wise one, right? So anyway, so hey, so where can people find you? What do you want people to know about you? Because I think everyone should connect with you.
Oh, I think LinkedIn is probably one of the best ways for people to connect with me, just given, you know, the various places that people are coming from. Always happy to chat with people there. And then from there, if there's more that we want to talk about, I'm always happy to share more contact information. And, you know, obviously you and I got in touch through a mutual contact. So
I
always
know,
happy to
wonderful.
continue the conversation.
That's wonderful. Do you want to spell your name so people can find you on LinkedIn?
Sure. So it's Anna with 2 N's, A-N-N-A, and then my last name is Akhtar, A-K-H-T-A-R. And fortunately, it's a unique enough name that there aren't too many Anna Akhtars out there, and only one at Reprise. So
that's wonderful. And I'll share your information also in the notes and whatnot.
Okay.
So is there anything else you want to say to people? Or did we cover it mostly?
I think the only thing I would add to just say to the general public is just take a break if you need one.
Take a break if you need
Take a break if you need one. The world is on fire and it's just a job. Do your job, be good at your job, but also honor yourself and don't let your job compromise your health, your mental health. Take a break. That's my advice.
That's wonderful, because honestly, taking good care of yourself, or excellent care of yourself, is your job too.
It is.
You know,
and you can't do your job if you're not taking care of yourself. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for being here. I mean, I like the laughs, I like the wisdom. So I really appreciate that you took the time to talk today.
Oh yeah, anytime. It was fun getting to chat with you.
Excellent. Well, thanks, listeners. I hope you like this conversation. This is Jacqueline, and have a super day.